this affirmation is the subject of a song that Swami Kriyananda wrote, and I can't help myself, and no one's here to stop me, so I'm going to suggest that we sing this song together. And it's another children's song, and you remember the words, yes, there are people who already know. Some of the experienced ones are saying, I know it's coming, but the words of the affirmation were, part all you mountains that stand in my way, nothing can stop my progress. And Swamiji wrote a children's song that the words are, move all ye mountains that stand in my way, nothing can stop my progress. Move all ye mountains that stand in my way, nothing can stop my progress. Tall trees fall aside, every bramble I slash with the sword of freedom. Tall trees fall aside, every bramble I slash with the sword of freedom. Brambles are kind of like hedges, weeds, that sort of brush that you have to kind of, if you're walking in the woods, tall grass, all that stuff, that's brambles. So, move all you mountains that stand in my way, nothing can stop my progress. Move all ye mountains that stand in my way, nothing can stop my progress. Tall trees fall aside, every bramble I slash with the sword of freedom. Tall trees fall aside, every bramble I slash with the sword of freedom. We're having strong soprano support here, I can hear it. Okay, so that's not enough. Swamiji added, or someone added, movements to the song. So please stand. Get ready to sing and dance. Who knew you were going to perform this morning? So, the words are, the motions are like this. Move all you mountains that stand in my way, nothing can stop my progress. That's right. There's some debate among scholars as to whether you continue to walk or whether you stand. I think we're going to continue to walk this morning. So, move all you mountains that stand in my way, nothing can stop my progress. Move all you mountains that stand in my way, nothing can stop my progress. Tall trees fall aside, every bramble I slash with the sword of freedom. Tall trees fall aside, every bramble I slash with the sword of freedom. So now you were concentrating, you did it extremely well, so now it's okay. There's no camera on you, you can smile. So, move all you mountains that stand in my way, nothing can stop my progress. Move all you mountains that stand in my way, nothing can stop my progress. Tall trees fall aside, every bramble I slash with the sword of freedom. Tall trees fall aside, every bramble I slash with the sword of freedom. Move all you mountains that stand in my way, nothing can stop my progress. Move all you mountains that stand in my way, nothing can stop my progress. Tall trees fall aside, every bramble I slash with the sword of freedom. Tall trees fall aside, every bramble I slash with the sword of freedom. Very good. And now from the Bible today. We will be getting into that. I thought it would be better to do that before the readings rather than after. This is from Whispers from Eternity by Paramhansa Yogananda. Help me to win the battle of life is the title of this one. O King of Kings, train thou in me, in the camp of discipline, the noble qualities of calmness and self-control. Be thou their divine general, like Krishna of yore, against the invading hordes of darkness, passion, and greed. Protect the celestial kingdom of my mind against entry by the tenacious warriors of evil. Let thy banner of peace wave always above the strong castle of my soul. And this reading is from Rays of the One Light by Swami Kriyananda. These are parallel commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. And this week's reading is entitled Reason versus Intuition. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. Jesus, when addressing his critics, appealed to reason and common sense. In his training of the disciples, however, he, like all great masters, encouraged in them the development of a higher faculty, soul intuition. For it is only by intuition that spiritual perceptions are achieved. In chapter 16 of the Gospel of St. Matthew, we find Jesus drawing on the intuition of his disciples by asking them who they thought he was in reality. They immediately understood that what he wanted from them was a subtle answer, not some obvious reply based on his nationality, sex, and the like. Peter it was, at last, who understood and answered the question on its intended level, the spiritual. Thou art the Christ, he said, the Son of the living God. The Bible continues, and Jesus turned to him, saying, Blessed art thou, Simon, son of Jonah, for not by human nature was this truth revealed to thee, but by my heavenly Father. And I tell thee this also, thou art Peter, which is to say, a rock. And upon this rock will I build my church, and never will the powers of darkness overwhelm it. Jesus was pleased with his disciple for relating to the question on its deepest level. Reason could not have given Peter that answer. The answer came through the faculty of soul intuition and proved him thereby to be a spiritually advanced disciple. It was his intuitive perception, that insight which cannot be shaken by tempests of reasonable doubt, that Jesus praised in referring to him as a rock. The church he referred to next was the edifice of cosmic consciousness. Any outer church institution would have to depend, as in fact the Christian churches have always done, on the level of understanding of its individual leaders and members. Peter's intuitive perceptions could never have been passed on to an outward succession of prelates. Clarity comes by direct soul perception. Confusion results from excessive dependence on reason as the guide to understanding. As the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita states, when your intellect, at present confused by the diversity of teaching in the scriptures, becomes steadfast in the ecstasy of deep meditation, then you will achieve final union with God. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om. We are coming to the season or the celebration of Easter, which is in 2 Sundays, and as preparation for that, the death and resurrection, the Mahasamadhi and resurrection of Jesus Christ, who is in our line of gurus here, we are going a little bit deeper into the Bible commentaries and little episodes of his life. In fact, this is our last opportunity to do so before Easter, because next Sunday we have a very special guest, Nayaswami Jaya, who is the spiritual director of Ananda India. He's coming here to give a free lecture and other things, but for the public, a free lecture, The Art of Joyful Living. And so that will be next Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. in Mylapore in Bharati Vidya Bhavan. So that is the Sunday before Easter, which is called Palm Sunday, but we'll be celebrating in a different way. And then Easter itself, April 1st, we're going to have a long meditation in the morning. And we have celebrated it in different ways over the years, and we thought it would be nice to just meditate and also to have a longer meditation. So it'll be, I think, from 9 to 1. I think it's a 4-hour meditation. And so, anyway, this is our last chance to go into these teachings this way. We also have a Wednesday class if you're a part of that or would like to be. But to go a little bit more into this reading with an understanding of how it was that Jesus as a guru related to his disciples. That's really one of the nice things we've been discovering as we go through this, that as we know very much the guru-disciple relationship is very much a part of India. And in fact, Yoganandaji begins his autobiography of a yogi by saying the characteristic features of Indian culture have long been the search for eternal verities, meaning eternal truths, and the concomitant disciple-guru relationship, and the necessary that which follows, or simultaneous disciple-guru relationship. So he tells us that the disciple-guru relationship is needed if you want to find truth, if you want to find these eternal verities. And it's needed and it's a part of India. One of the characteristic features of Indian culture has been ... the disciple-guru relationship. You see? And why? Because it's Indian? No, because it works. And so that's why it's honored. And so it's nice also to then see how Jesus, as a guru, not only as a world teacher, but as a guru of his own individual disciples, how he related to them, how he taught them. And so it says, the Bible says, when Jesus came into the coasts of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, saying, "Who do men say that I, the Son of Man, am?" And they said, "Some say that thou art John the Baptist. Some say Elias. Others say Jeremiah or one of the prophets." And so Jesus is asking them, who do the others say that I am? It's kind of odd because he has a name, Jesus, they all knew that. And so why didn't when the disciples say, well, everybody says you're Jesus, aren't you? I mean, that's what it says on your PAN card. I mean, are why is that even a question? I mean, do you walk up to someone else and you go and say, who do men say that I am? They say, we all have agreed, your name is Karthik or whatever. Now, the fact that it was even a question is fascinating. In fact, Master pauses, this is Yoganandaji's commentary, he pauses here to say, the knowledge of the law of reincarnation possessed by Jesus and his contemporaries, which is implied by Jesus' question and his disciples' reply, will be dealt with elsewhere in this series of Bible interpretations. It just begs the question. If Jesus is asking, who am I? Who do people say that I am? And they say, they could have, instead of saying these people, they could have said, some say you are Krishna, some say you are Rama, some say you are Vyasa. In other words, these are great ones of the past, great saints of the past. I mean, were they confused? I mean, why would they say that you were somebody else who lived long ago? You were Ikshvaku. And then Jesus doesn't say to them, how could I be them if they're dead and I'm alive? The fact that he doesn't correct them implies his acceptance of their suggestion that he must have been someone in the past. Meaning it's possible to have been someone in the past. Meaning reincarnation is clearly stated here in the Bible that way. And so Jesus said to them, but who do you say that I am. Okay, fine, other people, but what do you as my disciples say? And Simon Peter answered and said, Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus answered and said unto him, Blessed art thou, Simon, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to thee, but my Father which is in heaven. And I say also that thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. And he goes on to say, And I will give thee the keys of the kingdom of heaven. So it can be a little bit confusing that, wait a minute, did Peter say it or Simon say it or Simon Peter? And it's all the same person. And if you don't like that, my God, Arjuna and help me out here. Kunteya, isn't that his name? Partha. How many names? If they read the Bhagavad Gita, there's all this conversation between all these people. And there's Achutya sometimes answers and so on. So it's beautiful to have these different names, especially in the case of the Gita, because it brings out different qualities. It's a way of hinting at these other qualities of Arjuna and Krishna. So it's lovely that way. So here, the reason why Simon, he says Simon, and you say, no, Peter said it. Why does he say Simon? This is the moment which he got the name Peter. He wasn't Peter before this, he was Simon. But when he said something so intuitively wise, Jesus then gave him, you could even say, the title or the spiritual name, Peter. And so Peter wasn't Peter before then. And Peter, again, it comes from the word Petros, is the Greek word Petros, like petroleum is a word you've heard of, I don't know what lium means, but it's lium of the rocks. Petros is rock. And so he's saying your understanding, your intuitive perception is a rock, meaning something solid, the foundation upon which your spiritual perception can be built. So that's, if you're ever confused about Simon and Peter, that's the story. And so Master goes on to explain this. Jesus said, I care not what people in general think of me, but tell me what you realize. Peter answered, In thee is the manifestation of Christ consciousness, which is the only begotten Son, or reflection in all vibratory creation of God the Father, who is beyond creation. And so this is from the understanding of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, which in Sanatan Dharma corresponds to Om Tat Sat. So Om is the manifested vibration of God in this creation itself. The Tat is that spark of the divine in everything, or the Christ consciousness. And then Sat is the vibrationless portion. You remember God vibrated a portion of His consciousness, so there was a portion that He didn't vibrate also. And that's God the Father beyond creation. And so this is reflected again in this Father and Son. That's why he's saying, you are a manifestation of the Christ consciousness. Jesus answered, Blessed are you by your own good karma and the blessings of the Father, that through your intuition He has revealed to you the truth about me. Anyone identified with flesh and blood cannot perceive the Christ consciousness within me. It is the Father omnipresent in His heavenly cosmic consciousness who, through your exalted consciousness, has revealed to you the nature of Christ consciousness which is within me. And I say to you, O Peter, you have realized thou art that, and thus your consciousness is one with the cosmic consciousness. And then Master adds, Swami Shankara and the Vedas use the words Tattvamasi, thou art that, thou art the one with the cosmic Father. And so he states very clearly that you could not have come up with this thought on your own. There was no Wikipedia to, you are Jesus Christ, the Son of the living God, it says right here. Yeah, there was no reason, no rationale he could have given to, and no one had talked about this. Christ himself, Jesus had not said, who am I? Christ, just say Christ. There was no way for people to know. And so the disciples had to answer according to their intuitive understanding. And as he said, it was based on what? Your good karma, the blessing of the Father, and your intuition. So good karma, good actions of the past had brought, it wasn't just good luck. It wasn't arbitrary. It was that he had been working on this for lifetimes. His intuition, which he also had been developing through lifetimes and in the present lifetime, through meditation. And finally, the blessings of the Father. God's grace is in it too. It isn't arbitrary either. We attract that to us by being open to it. So it was all these things that worked together to help Peter to give the right answer. And Christ continued, "O Peter, on the solid rock of your wisdom, which is founded on cosmic consciousness, I will build my temple of wisdom, church of God consciousness, where seeking souls will find God after they reach the altar of meditation within it. And the decorated gates of misery-making hellish sense pleasures will not be able to lure those seeking souls who once have felt the joy of entering the church of Christ consciousnness, built upon the rock of my teachings through you." You see, it's so wonderful that he says the decorated gates of hellish sense pleasures will not lure people away. Why? Because they will have tasted something better. It's very simple. If you have something that you find that's even better, then you take that instead. First, we have stale burfi, and then we have good burfi, and then who wants the stale stuff anymore? No one. Then you have jangri, and forget it. Then it's all jangri from there on out. At least speaking for myself. And so you just don't go back to the other things that at the time they were the best that we had. And in a way, there's nothing wrong with that. In other words, we have to be sincere to our understanding of truth at the time, even if that leads us into making a mistake. If we were doing what we thought was right, then we have nothing to complain about, we have nothing to feel guilty about. We may have improved our understanding, but sincerity is so necessary to do what you think is right, to do what you know is right. And then if we get led or tempted or pulled in the wrong direction, we can at least say, well, but I want to do the right thing. I may not have done it so well in this moment, but I want to improve. And that's what gets us to that improvement. As we think, so we become. That which we concentrate on, that's what we draw to us. So we should always keep our sights held high and always identify with the highest that's in us, our highest potential. And as for the past and the things we've done wrong and knew were wrong, remember Sri Yukteswarji's advice. Sri Yukteswarji was a very stern guru. Perhaps the sternest of them all, even according to himself. He said of his own guru, "No disciples ever fled from my guru," because they always fled from him, Sri Yukteswar himself. What did he say with all of his sternness about our past transgressions? He said, "Forget the past." I mean, if anyone was going to take us to task and go, "Now look here, I told you," and he doesn't. He says, "Forget the past. The vanished lives of all men are dark with many shames. Everything in future will improve if you are making a spiritual effort now." So just forget the past. It doesn't matter. None of it matters. Think of Mary Magdalene, who had a very checkered past. There's all kinds of things that she could have felt guilty for. And yet she was healed and brought very much high in spiritual realization. And Jesus said of her, but also maybe it was of another one, he said, "To one who loves much, much is forgiven." And so when we love God especially, but when we try to love others too with God's love, a lot of this other past history, a lot of these income tax audits they're all forgiven. They're just deleted. All the warrants for our arrests that have stacked up in all the previous incarnations, they just get canceled. Again, by who we are now, who we are becoming, that's what's important. And so it's whenever you find yourself haunted by the past, just remember Sri Yukteswarji saying, "Forget the past," and then just say, "Forget what? I've already forgotten." And start from this day forward, this moment forward. So, through the perception of Christ consciousness within you, you will ultimately find the keys of knowledge and enter that heavenly region where the King of cosmic consciousness, or God the Father, reigns. Now, this thing about keys is a little confusing, and Master explains it. Through your exalted consciousness, after feeling the Christ consciousness in all creation, you will know the technique by which to feel the Christ consciousness beyond all creation. And I shall leave these keys, meaning these techniques of God contact, with you, so that anybody who can enter the church of your consciousness, that is, who is in tune with you, will also get the keys when he is ready to and deserving of entering into the kingdom of cosmic consciousness. So, you can understand perhaps what it all means, and as yogis, it makes perfect sense. But reading this initially, there's sort of this mythology that has been built up around Peter, that the whole church of Christianity was built upon him. He was the first pope, and everybody since then, Jesus made Peter the boss. Everybody who has followed Peter has been made the boss by him. So everybody is, and ultimately endowed by Jesus. You can understand the rationale behind that, and you can understand the human nature of it, saying, let us claim infallibility. But without going too deeply into that, there is also the thought that because Peter has the keys to the kingdom of heaven, that's what Jesus says, that people imagine that Peter is standing on a cloud outside the gates of heaven. And when you show up, he checks to see if your name is in the book, if you're on the guest list for today, or on the arrivals column. And then if so, then he, with his key, opens up the gate and lets you in, and then seals it again before the next person comes to the checkpoint. And so you can understand, again, why people would think this. But it's imagine being the one. Peter basically becomes a chokidar. Just... It doesn't seem like very interesting. For a few thousand years maybe, but after that you'd say, is there anybody else who can do this job? Maybe I can be in the kitchen at least, or do something else? So obviously there has to be more to it. I have to just block out. Sairam's enthusiasm is so fully expressed that I will just start laughing if I try to look at him. So again, this is what was really meant by that, as Master explained, and he used this phrase all the time. The keys to the kingdom are the techniques of meditation. In particular, he often spoke of Kriya Yoga. He said, this is the key. And to a bunch of Kriya Yogi initiates at an initiation, he said, you have the key in your hands. Use it. And so remember this feeling, this understanding that the keys are the techniques that get you free. Why are they called keys? Why not be called the vehicle or the airplane? In fact, he called Kriya Yoga the airplane route, but to God. But the keys are that which open the door. That's what you need a key for. And so it's the door of what? It's the door of prison. The door of the jail cell, or if you prefer to think of it another way, the key to the gates of heaven within you. You see, it's that key that unlocks. We know that we're locked out of the kingdom of heaven. How do we know? Because we don't smile all the time. When we're in the kingdom of heaven, we will smile all the time, under all circumstances, good or bad. Demonetization happens again, we'll smile. That's how you know you're in God consciousness. And so, otherwise, there's something to work on. So we know there's a joy that we want that we're not quite getting. There's some kind of barrier. And it's not a wall, it's a door. The difference between them is that a door opens. And so that's for this door we need this key. And so what is that key? Jesus is saying, and Master is explaining, the key is these meditation techniques. There are other ways to find God. So it isn't as if meditation is the only way. But Master was saying not only the keys, according to Yogananda, are the techniques of meditation, he was saying Jesus was saying it himself. He was saying these are the meditation techniques. Master and the other masters have said that Christ and his disciples practice Kriya Yoga, or a technique similar to it. And Swamiji points out that if he means similar, he means very similar, like extremely similar, not just, oh, they also just sort of meditated and so we'll call it similar. No, very close. This is the way that we open up the gates to the kingdom of heaven within us. There are other ways too, but the key of meditation is extremely effective, and that's why it's emphasized so much by the masters. He adds this other comment, the gates of hell. And this is helpful because gates of hell, we sort of either can go, ugh, or we can say, as soon as you say hell, I stop listening, because I've heard a lot about hell. I think I've heard enough in my for this incarnation, so I'm now taking a break from hell. But Master explains so nicely, the gates of hell signifies sense pleasures, as opposed to the pleasures of the divine consciousness, which one feels on entering the church of meditation. So he's just saying it's just the attraction to things which will bring you misery. And so that's all it is. It's nothing. There's nothing inherently wrong about it. It's not punishing. It's not a prison. It's just saying this is the road that leads to unhappiness. And how do we know? Well, we find out in time. I don't know if you read that in the letter that went out this week, the story of Master and that he told of the grapes. Did you read the story of the grapes? Okay, now I know who reads our emails and who has yet to read them, let's say. So, Master, because not everyone has read the story, Master told the story of a man coming from Alaska, which is far up northern America, very cold. He had tasted some exotic grapes that had been given to him by someone, and so he loved these grapes. And he left Alaska, he sold everything, he moved to California, and got a little house on near to a grape plantation where these grapes come from. And so the owner of the plantation came to him and she said, welcome to the neighborhood, why don't you have some grapes? And he said, it is exactly for these grapes that I have come, and so thank you so much. And so then she gave them to him and he politely thanked her, closed the door, and then just devoured the grapes and was just in ecstasy of grapes. And then the next day she brought him another pile of grapes, and he said, thank you so much, this is fantastic. And he was still digesting some of the grapes that he had from the night before, but no problem, there was room. And again he locked the door and then devoured the grapes again. And then he had a really good sleep. And then the next day she knocked on the door and he kind of was woken out of his grape sleep, and he thought, all right, well, it's fine. And opened the door and she said, I brought more for you. And he said, thanks. I didn't really need to be woken up this early. It is 1 p.m. after all, but okay. He then got the grapes and then he started eating them again, and then had an even deeper sleep. And the next morning at 1 p.m. she knocked on the door and he just said, okay, I actually have some from yesterday that I haven't eaten all of, but thank you anyway. And then he put them down, and then she said, you're welcome, and then closed the door. And the next day he was that evening he was eyeing the grapes and having them maybe one at a time. Next day she knocked, and he's, yes, and she brought more, and he said, please, I have enough. It's okay, thank you, it's been nice, but I'm good for a few days now. And besides, don't trouble yourself. And she thought, he's just being humble and polite. But I know he doesn't mean it, because he came for these grapes. So he added this to this growing stack of grapes. And then the next day she came with more grapes than ever before. And somehow kicked the door, with her foot to knock on it. And then he opened the door and he said, oh! He said, horrors of horrors, lady! Grapes, 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 enough! And then he said, don't give me any more, I can't stand them. And she said, I'm very happy now to not have to give you these, my profit-producing grapes, my saleable grapes. That basically, I can go back to selling these to people. That's what her whole plantation was for. Meaning that there was no need to waste them if he didn't want them anymore. But Master said, this story shows. So, again, we have too much of anything, and finally we just... Why should it be? Why should it be that 2 jangris are fine, but 200 are not? I couldn't believe that was true, so I tried it out. And after about 6 or 7, the room starts to spin and everything. And so, why should it be? I mean, if something is good, why not have it to infinity? Well, it's because the joy that it's giving us is giving it to us through the senses. It's our senses that are excited by this, which is fine. Nothing wrong with, again, 1 or 2 jangris. But if this is not a problem, jangri is not a problem for you, then think Mysore pak. As my friend, she doesn't like Mysore pak. She loves it, but it can sometimes, she doesn't like the calories in it, so she just has half a piece and then has the other half also. That it's the senses that give us there's that excitement. That's what we enjoy. That's fine. But then they get excited again, more grapes, and then they get excited again, more, and then after a while we feel drained. And what are we drained of most of all? We're drained of energy. You see, we give energy to that thing that we like. And then you can say in a way we get that energy back when we have that thing, when we enjoy that thing. How do you know that you give energy or putting it a simpler way, it takes energy to enjoy something. It uses up energy. How do you know? Because when we're very ill, very physically depleted, and then someone offers us something that we normally would love, we say, have some ice cream. I feel so sick, I can't even have that. I know that sounds crazy, but it's possible. You just feel so sick, I just don't want it. Hey, do you want to watch a movie? That's too loud. It's too stimulating. I just want to sleep. We don't have any energy to give to that thing, and therefore we can't enjoy it. And that shows that it, again, takes energy to enjoy these things when they are of the senses. And that's why he's saying this leads us in the direction which eventually will make us unhappy, because we'll drain ourselves of energy. That's all it is. It's not, again, really sin or bad or evil in itself, other than that it leads to unhappiness, which is to say it's not useful, it's not helpful. And so then we start to find those things that do lead to a happiness that never goes. And then Master paraphrases again, the words, I will give unto thee, refers to the revelations of Christ consciousness, meaning that he was going to give him, he was going to transmit higher consciousness and knowledge to him. And finally, the word keys refers to the spiritual techniques. And the words, the kingdom of heaven, signify cosmic consciousness, where God the Father reigns as the only king. And this is always true in the lives of the great masters. They hold out to their disciples the teaching or the questions or their vibration, and they, look to see how the disciples respond, how what they intuitively grasp. It isn't that, why don't you just ask them and explain them? Master said to Swamiji, you have a great work to do. And he said that to him several times. He said it to him on one occasion, and then he said it on several times throughout the rest of their time together. And someone asked Swamiji, why didn't you ask him, Guruji, could you explain a little bit? I'm ready to take notes. Could you give all the details of what you mean by this? And it sort of is a reasonable question. And Master said, Swamiji said, I never felt to. He said, you got more from Master when you didn't ask him flat out and directly about these things. Well, how could you get more? I mean, if you ask him, he'll tell you. If you don't ask him, he won't. So how are you getting more? You start to grasp it inside. And then you have that understanding tested. Someone was sitting with Swamiji, and he was trying to think of a story that he had told in the past. And he said, I'm trying to think of a story or of something from the past. And the disciple sitting near him said, do you mean this thing that person said? I don't want to go into all the details. But he said, yes, that's what I was thinking of. And the person, obviously, I saw this, I thought, wow, I mean, they're so intuitive. He didn't say, no hints. I'm thinking of something. Is this what you're thinking of? Yes, that's what it was. Wow. And so, because when you open yourself to the Guru's consciousness, or God's consciousness through the Guru, that's what really uplifts us. I told some of you this story yesterday, but it bears repeating again. Swamiji was had just finished writing a book. And whenever Swamiji was in between writing books, sometimes people would send him suggestions for the next book. You know, you would think after he had written 120 books, people would have let him have a rest. But no, keep going. So this person sent him an email saying, could you perhaps write a book on the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali? Because we all are yogis, we're all following the path of yoga, but we really don't know anything about the scripture of yoga, the Yoga Sutras. We know first Sutra 1. Now we come to the study of yoga. Okay, fine, and we can talk about that. Sutra 2. Yoga is chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is the neutralization of these vortices of feeling. Sutra 3. Anything? And then 4, 5, 6, and that's only the first book. And then there's 3 more after that. Nothing. Don't know anything about it. And you try to read books on it, they don't make any sense. And so he said, it just would be helpful, sir, if you could give a explanation of the Yoga Sutra, so that, especially it was near the end of Swamiji's life. It was, in a way, the last major book he published. In fact, he launched that book here in Chennai when he came to Chennai. That was part of the occasion of his public talk, was the launch of his Patanjali book. So this was just before that. And so Swamiji wrote and said, had you heard that I was writing it, or are you just in tune with me? And then he put in parentheses, again. So it was I thought, wow, again, how special for that person that Swamiji would outright say that to them. You see, because he was always trying to get people to tune in, not to him, but to tune into Master. But of course we saw Master through him. We couldn't help it. He was the one who made Master real for us by all of his stories of Master. His personal experiences, his telling of other things outside his personal experience, but also by his awareness of who Yoganandaji was. You see, everyone perceives according to their own ability. They can only grasp as much as their understanding will allow. And so many disciples, all with the same guru, will understand him in different ways, which is natural, but also to different degrees, at different levels or different heights or depths of understanding, depending on how you want to think of it. And so Master himself said that it's not just being in a spiritual place that makes you grow. He said there are many rats and mice who live in the canyon on the property of the ashram. They are not advancing spiritually. And so again, it helps us to, one of the reasons why we love Autobiography of a Yogi and all these great saints that Master met is because Master was able to perceive their greatness. And he was able to convey their greatness to us. And that is an obvious proof of his own greatness, his own capacity to perceive where they were in their spiritual realization. In fact, he told Swamiji at the end of life, he said, all those saints in the autobiography, practically, that I went to, practically all of them, he said, they kept asking me questions. He said he was a young boy going to ask them for advice, trying to find out they were asking him. He said it was frustrating. And they called him Choto Mahashaya, little great soul. He calls it little sir. those who know only English, okay, little sir, abadiya, fine. But if you know anything beyond English, Mahashaya is not sir. It's much more than sir. It's big sir. And so we will always have that awareness that we can only perceive according to our level of understanding, which can be increased. But when we hear also from others, their perceptions, it will be according to their level of understanding. And of course, different facets of truth are always there. So when we think of levels, unfortunately, it sort of implies a line and a progression or a ladder, and a higher level is better than a lower level. I don't really mean it like that. And yet there is an element of truth to it. And so when Swamiji was able to perceive Yoganandaji's greatness, and he was able to share that all with us from his own experience of it, and again his own consciousness of it. But more than any of these things, he told stories of Master. Yes, he told a thing, meaning of his own experiences. He told other people's experiences of Master. He knew the greatness of Master as much as he did. He never claimed, as another disciple did, "Just when I think I've understood him," she said, "I find he's more than that." And Swamiji's thought at the time was, my gosh, how could you ever think that you did understand him, even to begin with? He's so far beyond everything. And so, but Swamiji also tried to attune himself to Master's consciousness and said, use me as your channel to reach others. That's what Jesus was saying to Peter, that through you I will reach others. Those who tune in with you will tune in with me. And they will be able to get that blessing, that benefit. And so that's the road before us. Tune into the great masters. If you have a guru, tune into your guru. If you have love and devotion for a great soul incarnation of God, tune into that soul. You can ask Jesus to inspire you. You can ask Krishna to inspire you. However you feel, but ask them to think through you. This is one way to be in tune. When you meditate, feel that you're meditating with them. When you pray, feel that you're praying with them. A prayer is not a cry out into the darkness, and a prayer is not even a phone call. A prayer is just saying to the person right next to you, they're right here. So pray with that sense of closeness and their openness to you and listening to everything you're offering. And in this way, as you tune in, their consciousness will come more and more into you, not taking over your own, but bringing out that true God consciousness that is already within you. Swamiji often used the example of his singing teacher. He said, I had a singing teacher who taught me how to sing, but she was an old woman with a soprano voice that was very thin at this point. It was sort of worn out. But as she trained, she knew how to place her voice and sing properly. But as she trained him, he didn't end up sounding like a soprano. He had this deep, full voice. She brought out his own voice. Helped him to perfect his own voice. It wasn't that she pasted anything onto him of her own. And same thing with Master and Sri Yukteswar. Sri Yukteswar was very sort of attuned to the ways of wisdom and not of love. Swamiji looked at a picture of Sri Yukteswar with Master and said, I see so much love in those eyes. And Master said there was no love in those eyes. And of course he felt a great love from his guru, but his guru could be very stern. As he said, my father was at times stern, my elder brother at sometimes severe, but Sri Yukteswarji's training could only be described as drastic. Master would, like this, right here. See what I'm doing? I'm wrinkling the carpet with my foot, this little cloth here. And Master did that. In a crowd of 2,000 people, he got up and his foot just flipped over the corner of the blanket. And Sri Yukteswar said, look at that clumsy oaf. And everybody laughed. And Master said that was hard to take. He said, because I could have taught all of them many things, many times over. Meaning he was great in realization, and they weren't, and yet they were all laughing at him. But he said, I see why my master did that, because now no one can insult me. Sri Yukteswarji knew what Master would have to face in America. My gosh, a culture completely unknown to India at that time. India was unknown practically there. And it was a very, even by modern American standards, the 1920s were excessive in their just wildness. And so Master had to put up with an awful lot. And so he was prepared for that by his training by Sri Yukteswarji. It wasn't just arbitrary. But having said that, we so tune into the Guru's consciousness, we let him flow through us, and that brings out our own higher consciousness. It makes us who we really are. So Sri Yukteswar, with all of his wisdom and discipline, trained Master whose nature was that of love, very loving. And he didn't become more sort of stern and wise like Sri Yukteswar. He was, of course, wise, but you know what I mean. Just cold spiritual mathematics is the way Sri Yukteswar expressed himself, Master said. Master was a devotee. He was a bhakta. And he didn't become a jnani by tuning into his guru's consciousness. His guru brought out his own consciousness. And Swamiji said he felt so attuned to Master by the end. He said, I don't know where Yogananda ends and Kriyananda begins. And so let us tune into the Masters. Let them inspire our consciousness. And ultimately, let's have them lead us to God. God bless you.